Chapter 81. No? Fushin thought. For a man to see such an explosive film, even men would feel a sense of danger. Didn't he hug you? Didn't I kiss you? Impossible. After that, Fushin lowered her voice, but Suanan could still hear what she had to say. Xiaoxin, where did you get this film? Suanan asked. Speaking of the film, Fushin was also caught off guard. Who knew that it was a yellow card? Someone gave it to me on the street. An Gumo Cheng watched the movie and he really did not push you down? Fushin asked again. Nope. Suanan said angrily. Gumo Cheng told me to stay away from you so that I wouldn't be led astray by you. Tsk, Fushin said in disdain. Who was the one who led who astray? She still remembered her relationship with Suanan. On her way home from school, she saw Suanan fighting with other people, and she went forward to help. From then on, she fought car racing while escaping from Suanan. Other than smoking and drugs, she did everything that bad students did. You weren't a good girl in the first place, and you even said that I've led you astray. Xiaoxin? Suanan lowered her voice and called out. The matter of her pretending to be obedient was not something that Gumo Cheng could know. To think that Gumo Cheng was so handsome. He's really blind. Yes, he's blind. Suanan coordinated with Fushin and said. After she finished speaking, she saw Gumo Cheng walking out of the bedroom. His head was wet and he was wearing a white shirt. Early in the morning, Gumo Cheng showered again. Seeing Gumo Cheng staring at her, Suanan did not know if he had heard her conversation with Xiaoxin. These few days she was really too careless, always embarrassed in front of Gumo Cheng. Go and change your clothes. Old man Mu wants to see you. Gumo Cheng said. Buttoning up his sleeves, he put on his watch and went downstairs. Old man Mu wanted to see her? Suanan was startled. Then she remembered that the old man had called her yesterday. Old man Mu called to ask her to go to Mu family today. She said it was about Su Zihan at the last birthday banquet. Suanan knew that Su Zihan's small matter would not end like this. Anan, come here. I will return your innocence. The old man said seriously over the phone. The old man did not say much else, but he firmly said it to tell Suanan that he believed in her. Suanan didn't know how the old man cleared her throat. She couldn't remember anyone passing by when she was talking to Su Zihan outside the washroom. She was still hesitating about whether or not she should go to Mu family today. Although the old man trusted her, she was still very annoyed when facing Jiang Mei, Mu Jinyu, and the others. She didn't want to argue with them anymore. What was the point of asking those who didn't care to see her being innocent if they thought that she was the one who pushed it? However, now that Gumo Cheng asked her to go to Mu family, she obediently went there. Suanan changed into a new dress, and when she walked downstairs, the servants and Uncle Chen looked at her strangely. Uncle Chen walked in front of her, looked at Gumo Cheng who was watching TV in the living room, and said in a low voice, Madam, you are much younger than Mr. Teacher's body can't take the torture. With that, Uncle Chen blinked his eyes at Suanan, who paused for a moment before blushing. Just now, the sound of the playing room had spread across the entire Gu household. Not only did Gumo Cheng hear it, the Uncle Chen and the servants outside also heard it. They thought that he had intentionally asked Gumo Cheng to watch a movie to improve the taste between the two of them. Oh no, I've really lost all my face this time. Uncle Chen, no, I didn't know this was a movie. Suanan explained. The Uncle Chen laughed as he listened to Suanan. Madam, you don't need to tell us about the matter between husband and wife. It's just that teacher is getting on in age, take care of him. Uncle Chen did not dare to say it directly. Since Gumo Cheng was old, it would be easier for him to be tired than it was for young people. Suanan's face was completely red. She just shut up. Let's go. Gumo Cheng, who was sitting in the living room, heard the conversation between Suanan and the Uncle Chen, stood up and said to Suanan. Suanan looked at Gumo Cheng, who was standing in front of her, and blushed even more red. What was going on? She had been too easily blushing recently. In the past, her face had always been thick, so where would she be able to see a man's face that was burning hot? You want to go as well? Suanan looked at Gumo Cheng, who was walking in front of her, and asked. Gumo Cheng turned and looked at her. I'll send you over. As for Mu family, she had already made arrangements. There was no need for him to take action. Oh, Suanan nodded and walked behind Gumo Cheng step by step. The sun was shining brightly outside. After Gumo Cheng walked in front, Suanan unknowingly stepped into his shadow. His shadow shielded her from the sun, like a protective umbrella that gave her safety and warmth. Suanan lifted her head and looked at his tall and big back, thinking how great this would be for her entire life. Gumo Cheng parked the car at the entrance of Mu family, and watched as Suanan drove away after knocking on the door to Mu family's courtyard. He called before she left. Has she passed? Have you arrived? All right. Gumo Cheng spoke into the phone. Come over as soon as possible. After saying that, he hung up the phone and went back to Gu's to handle business. Suanan did not go in. Hearing the sound of brakes, she thought that Gumo Cheng had returned, and when she looked back, she saw that it was Su Zihan and Jiang Mei who had come. The last one to get off the carriage was Su Ya. When Su Ya saw Suanan, she lowered her head and followed behind Su Zihan. Su Zihan and Jiang Mei were not surprised at all when they got off the car. Su Zihan smiled at her provocatively. Anan, have you eaten breakfast? I need to eat my fill, otherwise I won't be able to eat my fill when I enter that place. Su Zihan ridiculed. Suanan pushed her and caused her a small loss. She had to make Suanan enter that place. Suanan ignored them and walked towards the Mu family. Junmei held her hand. Anan, don't forget what you said last time at the hospital. You were the one who pushed Zihan, causing her miscarriage. Is that so? Suanan laughed. Did I say that? As she said that, she pulled Junmei's hand away and walked straight inside. She, Suanan, was not someone that was easy to talk to. If she wasn't afraid of her sister, she wouldn't be at the mercy of others. Mom, what if she doesn't admit it? Hearing that Suanan did not plan to admit that she had hurt Su Zihan's small fortune, Su Zihan could not help but be worried. Junmei sneered. What are you afraid of? As she said that, she turned to look at Suya behind her. Isn't there a witness? Yeah, when we go in later on, you must tell the truth. You must not be afraid of Suanan changing her words and kill all of us, Zihan. Suya raised her head and replied with a word of N in a soft voice. Did you hear that? Suya replied softly, as Su Zihan pushed her away in annoyance. Zihan. Junmei berated, reminding Su Zihan that this was the Mu family. Suanan entered the main building of the Mu family. This was not the first time she had come to the Mu family. Every month, Mu family would send someone to take her to Mu family for a meal. She would come and go often, and sometimes she would even stay in Mu family, where they would specifically prepare a room for her. When she came here previously, she received very good treatment. When Lady Mu saw her, she would always come over with a smile on her face. Mu Jinyu was either holding her hand or standing in front of her, smiling as he cared about her. Everything was unpredictable. Who would have thought that one day she would become someone that the Merino hated? When Lady Mu saw her, his face immediately darkened. However, when he saw Su Zihan behind her, he revealed a smile. Zihan, you're here. Quickly, sit on the sofa. The Lady Mu immediately skipped over Suanan and went forward to pull Su Zihan's hand. Mu Jinyu also saw her and stared at her coldly, his eyes full of hatred. They were ignoring her, so Suanan ignored them. She went over to the old man who was sitting on the sofa and called out, Grandfather Mu. Anan, take a seat. Grandfather Mu pointed to a spot beside him. She sat down and the people facing her were Su Zihan and Lady Mu. Mu Jin. Old man Mu looked around but his eldest son did not see anything. Mu Jinyu's father. Lady Mu looked at the old man and said hesitantly, he will be here shortly. After she finished speaking, Mu Jin came in with a few people. The old man's face darkened when he saw the man in police uniform behind Mu Jin. He had said that the police could not be called. What did they mean by this? What do you mean? The old man asked. Dad, we didn't call the police. Lady Mu replied, this officer is Mu Jin's friend. What's the difference between this and calling the police? Dad, if Suanan didn't push Zihan, my friend would just treat her as a guest. If she does, don't stop the police from bringing the person away. Mu Jin added, what they were afraid of was that someone had proof in front of them, so old man Mu still had to protect Suanan. Calling the inspector over, even if the old man wanted to shield her, it wouldn't be of any use. You're all very well, the old man said coldly. He looked at Suanan and said, An, don't be afraid. Grandfather Mu will definitely protect you today. The old man's words made Mu Jin and his wife's faces darken, and Junmei became unhappy. Old man, is Zihan really Jinyu's child? She's also your biological grandson. Old man Mu looked coldly at Junmei, not wanting to talk to her. Su Zihan was very angry. She had lost Mu Jinyu's child. Why was the old man still favoring Suanan? But it didn't matter. Suya said what she saw in front of the police. It was useless for the old man to cover things up. He could only go and fish for people. Since he couldn't let Suanan go to jail, he had to let Suanan stay in the bureau for a few days as well. Dad, she's Suya. Seeing that the old man didn't bother with them, Lady Mu spoke up and looked towards the police officer beside Mu Jin. When Mu Jin brought the person over, he told the police officer something. Yeah, tell the old man what you saw. Junmei pulled Suya over to her side and said gently. When she spoke, her eyes were brimming with smiles, but she held onto Suya's hand with force. Chapter 82. Suya was a smart person, so she definitely knew what to say. I was just about to go to the washroom when I saw Big Sister Zihan and Anan arguing in front of the washroom's door. Suya looked at Suanan and Old Man Mu and continued. Sister Zihan said that she was pregnant with the child of young Master Mu. Anan became angry the moment she heard it. She scolded Big Sister Zihan for being shameless and stealing her fiancé. She said that young Master Mu was hers, and she would not give him to Big Sister Zihan. Then, Anan stepped forward and pushed her towards Big Sister Zihan. Sister Zihan was pushed by her and fell to the ground. After Suya finished speaking, she lowered her head in fear. Suanan felt that Suya was right, as if she had really seen everything and that she had pushed Su Zihan down. After hearing Suya's accusation, Mu Jinyu's face became gloomy. Anan, you are truly malicious. Even though you knew that Zihan was pregnant with my child, you still pushed her away. You pushed her on purpose. Su Zihan's eyes reddened as she held Lady Mu's hand tightly and cried, Auntie, Anan was jealous that I was together with brother Jinyu, so she purposely harmed my child. Lady Mu comforted Su Zihan gently. Zihan, don't worry. The reason we are here today is to seek justice for you and your child. As she spoke, She turned and looked at Suanan with a cold expression. Anan, to think that I used to treat you as my own daughter. I never expected you to be so vicious. I am truly blind. Indeed, Lady Mu was blind and actually believed what Suya said. Suanan pursed her lips and listened to what they had to say, not trying to defend herself. She didn't have to waste her time telling them she was innocent. Furthermore, Gumocheng had told her to come to the Mu family. He would definitely not let anything happen to her. Thinking about Gumocheng, the smile on Suanan's face became even wider. Su Zihan and Jian Mei were curious to know if Suanan could still laugh. They were worried that Suanan would refute what she said. Suya was making this up, and they could not bear to think about it. Suanan, what else do you have to say for yourself? As the patriarch, Mu Jin asked Suanan directly. Suanan shook her head. No. They've got witnesses. Did she say she didn't push her? Father, you heard what Suya and Suanan said, Mu Jin said as he turned his head to look at Old Man Mu, whose eyes were closed. Old Man Mu did not reply to Mu Jin. He still had his eyes closed, as if he had admitted what Suya had said. The old man did not say a word. Mu Jin said to the officer beside him, Officer, you have also heard the words of the witness. Suanan has also admitted that she caused Su Zihan some mischief. Suanan glanced at Mu Jin. How could she admit to harming Su Zihan? Take her to the station, Su Zihan said, and under Jiang Mei's gaze she changed her mind. And An is so vicious, she killed my innocent child. Suanan laughed as she watched Su Zihan cry and say that she had killed her child. With Su Zihan's acting, she still wanted to be a star in a play, and it was only Mu Jinyu who could not see through Su Zihan's true personality. Officer, take her away, Lady Mu said. What she wanted the most was her grandson. If Mu Jinyu had a child, her position in Lady Mu would become even stronger, and the authority of the Mu family would fall into her son's hands. Now, after being pushed by Suanan, the child was gone. She hated Suanan's viciousness. When the officer walked in front of Suanan, Old Man Mu opened his eyes. They have a witness. I also have one here. He's on his way over here. Officer, please wait a bit and hear what I have to say. After saying that, everyone present was startled. What? Old Man Mu also found someone to testify for Suanan? Father, you didn't bribe someone to defend Suanan, right? Lady Mu was the first to voice her doubt. Old Man Mu raised his head and looked at Lady Mu. Bribe? Who do you think I am? When Su Zihan heard the old man say that there was a witness, she couldn't help but become nervous and hold Jiang Mei's hand. The Suya they were looking for was colluded with them. What would they do if someone really saw the situation then? Old Gramps, Yaya will not lie. Jiang Mei held Su Zihan's hand and said, I know how much you love An, and I really want An to marry Mu Jinyu. But matters of the heart cannot be forced. Jinyu loves Zihan, while Zihan is carrying Jinyu's child. Jiang Mei purposely emphasized her tone when she said, Zihan is pregnant with Jinyu's child. The old man Mu sneered. Without my permission, even if you were pregnant, you wouldn't be able to enter my Mu family's door. Madam Su, your daughter's fate is not as good as yours. Being told by the old man Mu, Jiang Mei's face flushed red. That was because she was angry. Back then, she was Su Hua's mistress, and it was only because she was angered to death by Suanan's mother that she entered the Su family and became Su Hua's wife. Otherwise, she, Jiang Mei, would still be Su Hua's lover outside. Being exposed in public by the old man Mu made her extremely angry, yet the one who called her the old master of the Mu family. Old Gramps, no matter what, it is the truth that Suanan pushed Zihan away. Jiang Mei endured the rage in her heart and said, Yaya has already made it very clear. If you don't hear it clearly, she can say it again. That's right, Daddy. Even if you want to protect Zihan, it's useless if you want to, the Lady Mu said. Old Man Mu glanced at her. Wait. Then, the old man closed his eyes and didn't say much. He asked Lady Mu and Jiang Mei to wait for his witness. Not knowing who the old man was looking for, one of his witnesses made Su Zihan's heart flutter. She lied, and she felt guilty. Jiang Mei was also a little worried. She didn't know if someone really saw or if the old master called someone over to lie to him. No matter which one it was, they would all swear that this witness accepted Suanan's money and was lying. Dad, who are you looking for? Are they coming? The police officer has some matters to attend to in the department. Mu Jin reminded from the side as he turned to send Suanan back to the station. Officer can go back first. Old Man Mu opened his mouth and said, This is our family's business. We cannot trouble the police officers. At first, the old master meant not to call the police, and that this issue could be resolved in the Mu family. But since Mu Jin and his wife brought the police to their house, they had to let Suanan in. Even if Anan really pushed them to the side, it was only Su Zihan who brought it up. Furthermore, back then, Suanan's mother had saved Jinyu. They should not be too ungrateful toward others. Dad. Lady Mu saw that the old man was deliberately stalling for time and was waiting for the so-called witness, who was actually his person. Stop protecting Suanan. She was the one who pushed Zihan. She was the one who intentionally caused my grandson's death. No matter who you find to prove her innocence, I will definitely send her in. Saying that, Lady Mu stood up and had the police take Suanan away. It doesn't matter who you are looking for, if it's mine. A cold, indifferent voice came from the door. They turned around and saw an old woman slowly walking in. Sorry, there's a traffic jam, she said to Old Man Moo. Old Man Moo had already opened his eyes when he heard her voice and said to everyone present, "She can prove Anand's innocence." Su Anand sized up the old lady. She was around 60 years old and wore a cheongsam. Su Anand felt that she was a little familiar. She had seen her somewhere before. Hearing Old Man Moo say that she could prove her innocence, Su Anand suddenly remembered that she had seen her at Old Man Moo's birthday banquet. They had met each other in the washroom, which meant that the old lady had really seen him and Su Zihan at loggerheads. Mu Jin and Lady Mu knew who she was, so they were both dumbfounded the moment they saw her. When the old lady Gu came to testify, they did not dare to say that what they did was false evidence. The first person old lady Gu came in to see was Su Anan. This daughter-in-law of hers was bullied. No matter how busy she was, she had to come over and take charge for Su Anan. Otherwise, she would think that the Gu family was easy to bully. This young lady fell down on her own, old lady Gu said as she looked at Su Zihan. Su Zihan froze. This old woman really did see the scene of him and Su Anan arguing. "You're lying," Su Zihan said loudly in embarrassment. "I'm not spouting nonsense. I saw with my own eyes that you wanted to hit her and then accidentally fell down." Old lady Gu said lightly, "She didn't know you were pregnant." When she said that, the old lady Gu looked at Su Zihan in disgust. Luckily, he had married the wrong person and didn't ask for anyone from the Jiang family. Otherwise, the Gu family would definitely be in a mess. As expected of this little girl, she looked rather obedient. Old lady Gu looked at Su Anan and thought, "You slandered me," Su Zihan said angrily. "Where did this damned old granny come from?" "You must have taken the money to lie," Su Zihan said. The more she thought about it, the more she thought about it. It must be that in order to help Su Anan purge the charges, Old Man Mu found an old lady from the outside. It was just an old woman. Who would believe what she said? "Our family doesn't lack money." Old lady Gu lied when Su Zihan said that she was taking money, and said angrily, "Did her Gu family lack money?" "I think she took the money to slander people," the old lady Gu added. She then looked at Suya, who was standing behind Jiang Mei, and said, "Little girl, to be honest, did an An really push her away?" Suya really knew how to read people's faces. When the old lady came in, Mu Jin and Lady Mu shut their mouths at the same time, not saying a single word. Perhaps this old lady was a powerful master. As she was thinking, she was glared at by Jiang Mei. Both parties did not dare to offend her, and so they lowered their heads. "If he doesn't speak, it means that what he said just now is a lie." The old lady Gu laughed coldly. "The police officers have to arrest the person who made this false accusation." Seeing that old lady Gu's words scared Suya to the point that she did not dare to speak anymore, Su Zihan looked at the atmosphere and pulled on Jiang Mei's sleeve, calling out, "Mom." When old lady Gu came, Jiang Mei also noticed that something was amiss with Mu Jin and his wife. She felt that the old lady's identity was not ordinary. Which family was this old lady from that could cause the Mu family to be so afraid? Chapter 83. "Madam, my Zihan is really a small fry." Jiang Mei did not mention the matter of whether she wanted to or not. She added on, "The lighting in the hotel is bad. Maybe you did not see it clearly." As she turned the corner, the madam's eyes grew blurry with age. "Do you think my eyesight is bad?" Old lady Gu looked at Jiang Mei, but did not reply to her, and instead asked Mu Jin and his wife, "In the end, you think that I've accepted your old man's money and come here to lie?" Mu Jin was the first to reply. He laughed. "Where does the old mistress come up with that? What you lack the most is not money." It was really strange. It was impossible for old lady Gu to come over to prove Su Anan's innocence for the sake of money, and she did not have a good relationship with their family's old man. It was impossible for them to come here for no reason. Did Su Anan really not push Su Zihan? While Mu Jin was thinking, he turned his head and looked at Su Zihan. The matter was getting more and more complicated, involving old lady Gu. He felt that she could not pursue the matter any further. "This matter shall end here," he added. "She used a child's price to force Su Anan to such a state." An old woman came over and said a few words to prove Su Anan's innocence, saying that Su Anan did not push her. "Mom!" she anxiously called out, but Jiang Mei was also very frustrated and did not reply to her. Su Zihan turned her head to look at Mu Jinyu, and her tears flowed out. "Brother Jinyu, Anan really pushed me away." Mu Jinyu retracted his gaze from Su Anan's body. He looked at the teary Su Zihan and thought about how she had just lost a child. In front of everyone, she held Su Zihan in her arms. "Zihan, I believe you." As he spoke, he looked at Su Anan with cold eyes. "Anan, we won't look into how you harmed Zihan and lost her child, but you have to be modest about it." Seeing that Mu Jinyu acted as if he was an adult with a lot of things, Su Anan turned his head to look at something else and pretended not to see anything. When looking at Su Anan, old lady Gu was also observing him. She was very clear about the relationship between Su Anan and Mu Jinyu, and upon seeing that Su Anan was ignoring her, she pursed her lips into a smile. This girl clearly knew her feelings. She wasn't the type to look at the pot while eating. Her family had good eyesight. "We can't let this go like this." Old lady Gu opened her mouth and said, "You have wronged people, so you have to apologize to them." She then acted as if she didn't want to apologize, as if this matter wasn't over yet. He wanted to make his daughter-in-law apologize, so he had to apologize to his daughter-in-law first. Yes, Mu Jin said. This matter, there might be a misunderstanding. I will investigate it thoroughly. With old lady as a witness, Mu Jin started to doubt Su Zihan's words. He couldn't let Su Zihan apologize. This wasn't his own daughter. Dad, Mom, you don't want to pursue this matter anymore? Mu Jinyu did not understand what Mu Jin was doing. Mu Jinyu didn't want Su Anan to enter any sort of trap. He mainly wanted her to give in. Now, seeing that Su Anan was even ignoring him, she was extremely furious in her heart. How can the madam's words be false? Mu Jin retorted. When Jiang Mei heard the words, Mu Jin and his wife started to suspect Su Ya's words. If she continued to pursue this matter, this old lady might really cause a ruckus. Previously, Su Anan did not have any witnesses, but they did have one Su Ya. That was why she wasn't afraid of the old man Mu defending Su Anan, and insisted that Su Anan push him away. Right now there was an additional old lady. This old lady's identity did not seem to be simple. She was a little worried that they would pursue the matter further. At that time, Zihan would really become the detest of the Merino, even after losing a child. The most important thing was to take this opportunity to convince Mu Jin and his wife to get married as soon as possible. Seeing that Mu Jin and his wife did not want to bite Su Anan anymore, old lady Gu did not spare them. When she came, her son said that it would be fine if he just brought her out of Mu family. As long as she could show the film to Merino, not only would An be fine, but she had even slapped Merino's face to let them see her and her true appearance. Her son said, they fit. At first she didn't understand. Then she understood. Not completely exposing the truth was to make Su Zihan and Mu Jinyu marry each other. This move was even more ruthless than exposing the fact that Su Zihan framed An. Old lady Gu stood up and nodded to the old man of the Mu family. When she walked to Su Anan's side, she said, let's go. After Su Anan heard what old lady Gu had said, she left the Mu family with the old man. Exiting the Mu family, Su Anan walked in front of old lady Gu and said, Grandma, thank you. Old lady Gu, who was standing beside the carriage, pulled her face down when she heard this name. Grandma? Am I old? Not old, not old. Su Anan continuously waved her hand. The old lady in front of her looked to be in her 60s or 70s, but she was decently dressed, not like an old lady. However, with her age there, she couldn't possibly call the old lady auntie. Humph, old lady Gu said unhappily. This girl is about the same age as my family's Ziming. It is true that she is called grandma, but this is my daughter-in-law. How could she call me grandma? Cheng Cheng's taste is so bad. The old lady Gu said unhappily, let's go. Saying that, she told Su Anan to get in the car. Su Anan shook her head, thanking her. Old madam, I can go back by myself. Thank you very much today. She could not call her granny, so she changed her name to Madame. Get in. Old lady Gu was not satisfied with Su Anan's way of addressing her, and said with a cold face. She saw that Su Anan was still standing there, and said angrily, why aren't you getting on the car? You're not listening to me this early. After old lady Gu finished speaking, she looked down at Su Anan and felt that she shouldn't overdo her evil mother-in-law's role. If she scared the little girl away, who would still dare to be her son's daughter-in-law? Madam, I? Before Su Anan could finish her sentence, old lady Gu spoke up. Call me mother. Mom, Su Anan repeated in surprise. Her mother was repeating what old lady Gu had said, not calling her madam, but old lady Gu agreed. Yes, good girl. Hearing Su Anan calling her mother, old lady Gu's face revealed a smile. Cheng Cheng married a good wife. Success? Su Anan's brain was a little insufficient. Why did this old lady want her to call her mother, and also succeed? Who was this succeed? My son is called Gu Mocheng. The old lady Gu got in the car after she finished speaking. Speaking till here, Su Anan could not help but understand. The old lady in front of her was her husband, Gu Mocheng's mother. No, this was her mother-in-law. Su Anan was startled for 3 seconds. Seeing old lady Gu's gloomy face at the window, she immediately got on the carriage. Su Anan, who was sitting in the car, was unconscious. How could it be? This old lady was her mother-in-law. Then, thinking back to when Gu Mocheng was about 30 years old, and heard that he was the second oldest at home, and had a nephew the same age as her, this meant that the old lady was Gu Mocheng's mother. As Su Anan was thinking, old lady Gu sized her up. She saw that her wife was getting more and more satisfied, and planned to bring her to the Gu mansion to play for a few days today. Her thoughts were interrupted by Gu Mocheng's call. Where? Gu Mocheng asked. The people in the car have already been picked up, old lady Gu said. I'm still worried about that. Indeed, I'm worried, Gu Mocheng said honestly. Old lady Gu had been spoiled badly by his father. It was very unreliable for him to do things at her age. After hearing what Gu Mocheng had said, old lady Gu asked angrily, is there anyone who would say that about their own mother? Send them back to me, Gu Mocheng followed, saying, I haven't had the time to go to my house during this period of time, so I'll bring her there when I'm free. The meaning of these words was obvious. It was to not let the old lady bring Su Anan to the old hall. What do you mean? Afraid that I'll eat your wife? Seriously, I forgot about mother when I had a wife, old lady Gu said, and made a crying sound. Gu Mocheng knew what she was trying to do and said indifferently, my dad will take advantage of you. Since she was young, he had always been extremely anxious when the madam cried. He would agree to anything she asked of him. Gu Mocheng did not feel that this method of pampering his wife as if his life depended on it. His mother was already so old. Look at how spoiled she was by his father. Good, you stinky kid. Old Lady Gu gritted her teeth as she spoke. She looked at Su Anan, who had a face full of shock, and said helplessly, I'll take this person back to you. Yes. With that, Old Lady Gu hung up the phone. She looked up at Su Anan, who lowered her head in embarrassment. Su Anan was still trying to digest the fact that this old lady was his mother-in-law. What are you looking at? The madam said unhappily. Nope. Su Anan shook her head. She felt that the old lady was rather cute. Although the old lady and Gu Mocheng were arguing, the warmth between them was something she had never experienced before. His mother died too early, so Suwa didn't say a single word to her. Seeing Su Anan's obedient look, Old Lady Gu kept the anger on her face. She had to be careful not to scare the little girl away. Do you think my house is good enough? When this was brought up, his face quickly turned red and he lowered his head. She blushed faster and faster, just by mentioning the two words, Gu Mocheng. Seeing Su Anan's bashful expression, the experienced Old Lady Gu understood that it was possible that this child had fallen for her. It was a good thing that someone really liked her son. Her son finally had someone to like. The more Old Lady Gu thought about it, the happier she became. She pulled Su Anan's hand and said, Let's properly make peace and live our lives, then give birth to a fat grandson for me. The thing she had been looking forward to for so long was about to come true. Her grandson is about to arrive. After Old Lady Gu left, the police officer took out his phone and said to Mujin unhappily, Mr. Mu, later, when things are clear, call in the detective. After which, he walked out. Chapter 84. After Old Lady Gu and Su Anan left, Old Man Mu returned to his own building. He gave them face and told them not to bring this matter to the police station. They did not want to listen, so he invited the police officers to the Mu family. During the birthday banquet, Old Man Mu had known from Su Anan's photo that Gu Mocheng and his daughter had a deep relationship. After all these years, he hadn't heard of any women in Gu Mocheng's life. But now that there was one, it showed that Gu Mocheng was serious. Amongst these juniors, Gu Mocheng was definitely not bad. After the old master and the officer left, the only people left in the Mu family main hall were Su Zihan and her mother, Su Ya, and Mu Jinyu's family. Zihan, did Su Anan really push you away? Mu Jin asked. If the person who came was an ordinary witness, he would think that his clan's old man had spent money to call him over to help Su Anan. But the person who came was the old Madame Gu, the wife of the former head of the Gu family, Gu Jin. She needed money to speak up for Su Anan. After thinking about it, Mu Jin could only suspect that Su Zihan had lied. Being stared at by Mu Jin, Su Zihan started to panic. Uncle, you don't believe me? Mu Jin shifted his gaze to Su Ya, who was behind Jiang Mei, and asked, Tell me, did you really see Su Anan pushing Zihan? Su Ya, who was called out, was even more afraid. She shook her head and did not dare to speak. Director Mu, it's true that Zihan pushed Zihan's child away. Jiang Mei was calmer than Su Zihan, and could tell that Mu Jin and his wife treated the old lady differently. Who was the madam just now? It's not that we don't believe Zihan, it's just that the one who testified for him just now was the old Madame Gu. She wouldn't help him for money. Old Madame Gu? Su Zihan heard the old lady's voice. Who is she to Gu Mocheng? Hearing Su Zihan's excited words, Mu Jin was stunned and said, Gu Mocheng is her son. With this, Su Zihan and Jiang Mei realized that it was Gu Mocheng helping Su Anan yet again. Su Anan. Recalling that the elegant old lady was Gu Mocheng's mother, she joined forces with Su Anan to deal with him. What did he mean by seeing himself falling? It was obvious that old lady Gu was using her identity to help Su Anan, causing him to have no choice but to let Su Anan go. When Su Zihan called out Su Anan, her tone became sharp. The smile on her face not only disappeared completely, but her eyes revealed a sinister look, causing Lady Mu to gedeng sound. In her heart, Su Zihan was gentle, pitiful, and wronged. Why would she have a face full of viciousness? When she thought again, it was impossible for her not to hate Su Anan, since her children had all been killed by him. Su Anan lied to us. That old woman is her mother-in-law. Su Zihan said impulsively as she could not suppress the anger in her heart. Jiang Mei wanted to stop her, but it was too late. This daughter of hers, if she was not by her side, how many people would she offend? What mother-in-law? Mu Jinyu, who was at the side, asked. Su Anan was married? She was only 20 years old this year, and they were engaged to be married before. The old man planned to have Su Anan marry her once she turned 20 years old. Su Zihan could tell that Mu Jinyu cared about her, and her face darkened in anger. Su Anan, this slut, only knew how to seduce men. With Su Zihan blurting out the relationship between Su Anan and the Gu family, the Su family couldn't hide the matter of Su Anan reaching the Gu family, even if they wanted to. Su Hua didn't want to say it was because he wasn't sure when Gu Mocheng would abandon her. Su Zihan didn't want to say that she didn't want others to be envious of Su Anan. Although it was said that Gu Mocheng was old and ugly, and couldn't go in that way, he was the one in charge of the Gus, a person that everyone in Peace City wanted to curry favor with. Jiang Mei was not willing to say that she was afraid of others knowing that the Gu family had originally requested Su Zihan, and they had used Su Anan to replace her. Without thinking, Su Zihan just said it out loud, and Jiang Mei could only reveal the relationship between Su Anan and him. I won't hide this from you guys. We previously said that Anan followed an old man for money. This old man is Gu Mocheng. Originally, the Gu family wanted to marry Zihan as Gu Mocheng's wife on the account of our Jiang family. When Anan found out that the one who was going to marry Zihan was Gu Mocheng, when the Gu family came to pick her up, she went over to stop Zihan. When Su Hua and I discovered it, she was all ready? Jiang Mei intentionally did not finish her sentence, and she followed after her. I don't know what methods Anne used to actually get Gu Mocheng and her to bed. They all said that Gu Mocheng couldn't do it, but this didn't mean that Gu Mocheng couldn't do it. Su Zihan thought that Gu Mocheng might not have enough stamina in this area, or he might have some hobbies in other aspects and use tools to replace them. In any case, in Su Zihan's eyes, Gu Mocheng was just an old man who was inferior to Mu Jinyu in every aspect. Because it was about business, Mu's father had met Gu Mocheng once. His son could not even compare to someone like Gu Mocheng. It could be said that Gu Mocheng had completely inherited the good looks from Gu Zhen and Old Lady Gu, and in the entire Peace City, there was no one better looking than him. In this way, he became a very charming man in his 50s. How did she become what Su Zihan called an old man? Mu Jin looked at Jiang Mei and Su Zihan in puzzlement. Su Anan and Gu Mocheng. When Mu Jinyu heard that Su Anan had crawled onto Gu Mocheng's bed for money, his heart was filled with rage. Su Anan, you are too shameless. He then thought about the man who kicked him in the hospital, and asked Gu Mocheng while enduring his anger, was the man who took Su Anan away from the hospital the last time Gu Mocheng was Gu Mocheng? Su Zihan had heard from Jiang Mei that there was a very good-looking man that came to the hospital to take Su Anan away. She had guessed right. She was the man that Su Anan slept with at the Su family banquet that night. How could such a good-looking man be Gu Mocheng? No, Su Zihan replied. The man in the hospital is in the photo. He might be An's lover. What do you mean maybe? Is Su Anan's lover outside? Looking at that man's good suit, it might not be Su Anan who took Gu Mocheng's money to raise that man. Bastard. Hearing this, Mu Jinyu became extremely angry. The anger in his heart wanted to find an outlet to vent. Su Anan, this slut. As he spoke, he slammed the teacup on the table against the floor. Looking at the fragments on the ground, he felt slightly better. Mu's father and Lady Mu's faces darkened when they heard him. Their impression of Su Anan was extremely bad. When Old Lady Gu came to testify, they thought that Su Zihan had lied and wrongly accused Su Anan, but they never thought that Su Anan and Old Lady Gu had teamed up and bullied them. Uncle, it was really Su Anan who caused me to lose my child. What Yaya said was the truth. Su Zihan took this opportunity to say in an aggrieved tone. Mu's father and Lady Mu looked at each other and thought that it was Su Anan who asked Old Lady Gu to testify for her. Su Zihan also wanted to say that she couldn't let this go, and that she had to settle the score with Su Anan. Jiang Mei held her hand and spoke first. Director Mu, don't pursue this matter with Lady Mu. Hearing Jiang Mei's words, Su Zihan turned her head to look at her. We can't afford to offend the Gu family. Last time, Zihan and Anan argued a little, and Gu Mocheng brought a few people over to Su family to beat Zihan up. Mu's father and his wife knew that Su Zihan was beaten up by her men. At that time, they didn't know that it was by her men. No one dared to offend Gu Mocheng in all these years, firstly, because of the Gu family's power, and secondly, because you, Gu Mocheng, offended him. Just think that we, Zihan, fell down. For the sake of Su family and the Mu family, Zihan will have to endure all these grievances. What Jiang Mei said made Mu's father and Lady Mu very touched. Lady Mu held Su Zihan's hand and said with a pained heart, Zihan, you have suffered. This auntie will make it up to you in the future. Because they knew that the person behind Su Anan was Gu Mocheng, so they were a little afraid. Since the old man was biased towards Su Anan with this matter, according to what Jiang Mei said, this was the best way. Jinyu, you must treat Zihan well in the future, Lady Mu said to Mu Jinyu. Immersed in the anger Su Anan brought him, Mu Jinyu absent-mindedly responded to Lady Mu's words. There will be children in the future. Lady Mu said with a smile. She was so hurt that she fell down. Her child was also gone, but she couldn't let Su Anan suffer anymore. Zihan, Jiang Mei understood what Su Zihan was thinking. She pushed Su Zihan and spoke according to what Lady Mu was saying. From now on, you have to change your address to Mother of Lady Mu. Lady Mu smiled and said that she had no objections. Back then, she had abandoned the kindness of Su Anan's mother's life and allowed Su Zihan to be with her. They wanted their son to marry a woman who would help them with their career. After Su Zihan heard this, she revealed a smile and shyly looked at Mu Jinyu. The marriage between Zihan and Jinyu should have been settled already, right? Jiang Mei said to Mu's father and Lady Mu. This time, he did not let Su Anan enter the bureau for nothing. But more importantly, it was settled by the marriage between Zihan and Mu Jinyu. He was not afraid that Su Anan and Zihan would snatch the opportunity to enter the Mu family. All right, we must discuss this wedding day when we are free. Mu's father's words came to an end. He looked at Mu Jinyu, who was lost in his thoughts, and said to Mu Jinyu in a low voice, Jinyu, this year's New Year, you guys will be married off before the New Year. Mu Jinyu's mind was full of Su Anan and Gu Mocheng's matters. He looked at Su Zihan, whose face was flushed, and replied indifferently, Ugh. Anan, are you back? When Su Anan arrived at the Gu household, Gu Mocheng immediately called. He was worried that old lady Gu had kidnapped Su Anan, so Gu Mocheng understood his character the best. Yes, we've already arrived, Su Anan replied. After she finished speaking, she thought of the fact that Gu Mocheng was working, and immediately said, I'm fine, quickly go and do something. We'll talk about it when we get back tonight. Chapter 85, Yes. Gu Mocheng did not speak anymore. As the ruler of the Gus, there were many things waiting for him to decide every day. After he hung up, the assistant waiting to report to him became very interested in the person on the other end of Mr. Gu. So many days had passed, and the assistant was still in a hurry to get him out of a car that day in a hurry when he and his wife began to do it in broad daylight. Isn't this what you call having a sweet time? Su Anan hung up the phone, and her face revealed a happy smile. The Uncle Chen beside her knew that she was talking to her husband and understood what Su Anan was thinking. Had she fallen in love with Mr.? It's really good. After so many years without anyone to take care of her, the old man and the old mistress were both worried sick about her husband's life. They were afraid that their Mr. would never marry for that woman. This Gu family was good at everything, but they were too infatuated. Gu Mocheng's group had not yet entered the house when Su Anan heard the sound of a carriage and immediately threw down the book in her hands and ran downstairs. For some reason, when she found out that Gu Mocheng had returned, she was extremely excited. Even without wearing her slippers, she could still see that he was naked. The moment Gu Mocheng entered, he saw Su Anan standing at the profound entrance with a smile on her face. He was startled for a moment, then shifted his gaze downwards and landed under Su Anan's snow-white legs. The sky started to turn cold. Gu Mocheng frowned. She liked to be barefoot so much. Shoes? Su Anan smiled and replied, Oh. Saying that, the servant came over and gave Su Anan a pair of slippers and also took the jacket from Gu Mocheng's hands. The room was very big. When Gu Mocheng was alone, he felt that there was some life in the house as he looked at the Su Anan who was moving around. Hubby, drink some water. Su Anan brought a cup of water in front of him. She smiled as she looked at Gu Mocheng. When she came back from the Mu family, she had already called Gu Mocheng. She missed him. She had never thought so much about or missed a man, not even her ex-fiancé, Mu Jinyu. Anan, did my mother make things difficult for you? Before dinner, Gu Mocheng sat on the sofa in the living room and asked Su Anan. Nope. Su Anan shook her head, then blushed and said softly, Mom, you're a good person, you treat me well. After she finished speaking, she secretly raised her head and saw that Gu Mocheng's face was as normal as before. It was true that she had called her mother. However, just thinking about how she would call Gu Mocheng the same person mother made her face burn. Oh, Gu Mocheng drawled out in reply. He obviously did not believe Su Anan's words. No need to speak up for her, Gu Mocheng said of the old lady Gu mercilessly. Huh? Su Anan felt weird about Gu Mocheng's tone, as if he really despised his own mother. Gu Mocheng took out his cigarette very naturally as he leaned on the sofa and started smoking. Over the past 10 years, his addiction had gotten worse and worse, and he couldn't stop it even if he wanted to. Su Anan hated smoking, but when she saw that Gu Mocheng did not hate smoking at all, she instead thought that the way Gu Mocheng smoked was very pretty. Did she like a person? No matter what, he was a good person. My mom is spoiled. She's a bit willful. Gu Mocheng's words stunned Su Anan for a moment. This did not sound like a son talking about his own mother. No way, Su Anan replied. She felt that the old lady Gu was pretty cute and had testified for her in the Mu family. Mu's father and Lady Mu didn't even dare fart when they heard those words. Who spoiled her? Su Anan asked. Gu Mocheng took a drag on his cigarette and continued. My dad. The Gu family was famous for being good to their wives, and Gu Zhen was even more so. Ever since he married the old lady Gu, even now, he had never scolded his wife, not to mention finding some woman outside. Su Anan had heard that Gu Zhen was very good to his wife, so good that people couldn't bear to watch. But that was just a rumor. Su Anan listened to it like it was a story. Hearing it from Gu Mocheng's mouth was different. What Gu Mocheng said must be the truth. Is your dad and dad really very good to your mom? Su Anan's interest was piqued, and she asked. She did not say daddy, but mommy. Once she said that, Gu Mocheng's smoking stopped, and he looked at Su Anan with a serious expression while holding onto his cigarette. He replied with a, okay. Su Anan, who had been with him for a short while, could actually hear the displeasure in his tone. Didn't you yell very well? Gu Mocheng said indifferently. He stared at Su Anan's flushed face and continued smoking her cigarette. Su Anan calmed herself down and said with a red face, Is daddy really that nice to you? Her skin was very white, and when it turned red, her entire face would turn red, making people want to go over and have a taste. This was exactly what Gu Mocheng thought at this time. He stared at Su Anan's face, and his gaze landed on her skinny collarbone. He quickly moved his eyes away and fiercely smoked. Yes. It was indeed very good, to the point that even he, as his son, found it difficult to continue watching. It was also because of Gu Zhen's love for his wife that he had subtly allowed Gu Mocheng to fall in love with her, until the end. Therefore, he didn't easily give out his feelings. If he gave up his feelings for that person, then he would love that person without reservation. For 10 years he had preferred being alone to getting married. He wasn't in love with Suanan. Even if he didn't fall in love, he would still treat her very well. Mom is so happy, Suanan said with jealousy from the bottom of her heart. She was not the only one who envied the old lady Gu. Gu Zhen was such a perfect man. She had only been good to her wife all these years, without any flowers or plants. This was something that many men couldn't do. For example, her father, Su Hua. Her mother had fought hard with Su Hua, but in the end, Su Hua still managed to sleep with him. People can't compare to people. Anan. While Suanan was thinking, Gu Mocheng looked at her and said, "I will treat you well." He said something. He should have followed up with the words that came out of his mouth, but when he looked at Suanan's spirited eyes, he was unable to say anything. The cigarette in his hand burned, the smoke drifting towards Suanan, causing him to cough loudly. Gu Mocheng looked at her before extinguishing the cigarette in his hand and passing the water on the tea table to Suanan. The addiction was too great to stop now. Suanan choked and immediately took the cup from Gu Mocheng's hands. Only after she drank it did she remember what Gu Mocheng had drunk from this cup of water. The cup of water was in her hand. After taking a sip, her lips curled up into a smile as she took another sip. I know. Gu Mocheng was a very responsible man. Ever since he slept, he did not send her back to the Su family. He was a good man. Thinking about it, over this period of time, Gu Mocheng had protected her and helped her go to the Su family to beat up Su Zihan, helping her find the old lady Gu to prove her innocence. One piece after another, they were like a brand imprinted on her heart. She couldn't wipe them away even if she wanted to. I'll try to be a good wife. Suanan looked up with a smile on her face, as she said seriously. She knew that Gu Mocheng wanted a well-behaved wife, and her character was not considered good. She was also a little rebellious, so she was quite a ways off from being virtuous. But she will try. She had thought about it, and needed to work hard to move in the direction of the wife that Gu Mocheng wanted. The Suanan in the past must definitely not have one. Suanan's sincere eyes made Gu Mocheng want to smoke again. He paused for a moment, then called out, Anan. I can give you everything you want, but I'm sorry about one thing. Before he could finish speaking, Suanan sensed that something was wrong, and her heart began to ache faintly. I can't love you. When the words came out of Gu Mocheng's mouth, Suanan's mind repeated the same words, his ears buzzing. His heart was pulled tightly, making her feel uncomfortable, making her want to cry. However, she was still smiling, and her smile was very bright. Yes, I know. She wanted to say, I can love you. As she spoke, she stood up. Hubby, I'm a bit hungry. Let's see if Auntie has finished cooking dinner. With that said, Suanan turned and walked back to the kitchen. Can't love her? Gu Mocheng's straightforward and genuine words made Suanan feel extremely uncomfortable. When she turned around, her tears had already flowed out. She didn't want to cry in front of Gu Mocheng. What was there to cry for? It was normal that he didn't love her. What was there for him to love her for? And it was also through this conversation that Suanan found out that there was a woman in Gu Mocheng's heart that she couldn't compare to. A woman that she wouldn't forget after 10 years. Who told herself to be born 10 years late and not have met Gu Mocheng 10 years ago? Gu Mocheng watched as Suanan got up and left. When he said those words, she felt that she was slightly hurtful, but it was better than lying to her. He truly could not love anyone. Otherwise, how could he not have a woman by his side for 10 years? He treated Suanan as his wife. Because of the Gu family's upbringing, he knew that he wanted Suanan. This was his wife. That's good for some women. He didn't know what would happen to Suanan. When she had smiled and said, I know, she had smiled sweetly, but he had looked at her with an uncomfortable expression. Gu Mocheng was annoyed. He took out his cigarettes and started to smoke them in the living room. The chef invited by the Gu family was found in a 5-star hotel, especially the soup dumplings for breakfast, which was Suanan's favorite. But when she faced the food on the table, she found it boring. From last night to the morning, the only thing that remained in her mind was Gu Mocheng's I can't love you sentence, because she hadn't slept much during the entire night and kept tossing and turning in her bed. Can't love her? It was because he had a woman he really liked in his heart, so he hadn't taken a wife for 10 years. That must be it, thought Suanan as she bit down hard on what was in her mouth.